Well, what I'm going to start with is this is a start of a start for me. And actually, I'm a very novice photographer. I have a background in painting, have taken some courses and whatnot through the years in that, and all of a sudden have become very hooked passionately to photography. So this is a start, and you're going to see in some ways the technical novelty of it for me, but what I think I bring to it is a painter's eye. So I use the same principles of composition and such, and color and light, contrast in a photograph that I do in painting. This is my first show. That's the other thing.
Yay.
Yeah, so it was quite a leap of faith, I should say. It's a personal story. My father was an incredible photographer, and he passed away exactly a year ago today. And I had been taking care of him on a pond in Indiana, and I had my point and shoot with me, and every morning I was up at 4 a.m. and the light, that's what hooked me, okay? And also, when you mentioned nature, the butterflies and the dragonflies, as they'd get going, it was like, okay, here's my photo. So that's what started the whole thing, and since then have been doing it almost every day, a photo a day. What you're going to see in this exhibit, almost all of these were taken from October, because one of them is October to January. And you're going to see a very big difference as far as the light in winter as you see right now. So now what I'm taking outdoors, the light is, every photograph I'm getting is very different from these, okay? I work as an occupational therapist. I primarily work with kids on the autism spectrum. And I use a lot of art with them because they think visually. They tend to think in pictures. And what I think of in photography as other art is that it's a visual language. And that's what I use with them, and that's what I'm trying to portray in my photographs as well, is what moment can you take away, even if it's just the light, even if it's just the color. I kind of prepared a little handout here. My equipment, I thought I'd talk about that. I use a Canon 7D DSLR. It's a new camera to me. I'm still learning it like crazy, and I'm really enjoying it. The lenses I use, I have an 18 to 55 millimeter, a macro, a 500 millimeter zoom. I also use my point and shoot, my little Canon, it's a PowerShot SX20, and I get some decent photographs with it. My post-production, I took a course in Lightroom, and I'm really loving that. I'm not so much a Photoshop nut. I kind of like it. It seems for me that I use too much of a heavy hand with it. It looks artificial when I use it, whereas the Lightroom, usually all I do is I punch a little bit of color, I sharpen it slightly, I sometimes vignette it a little bit, and then I get the effect that I want.
Could you just tell me what vignette is?
Vignette is, actually I'll show you upstairs.
Okay,
I have one. What you'll see is kind of, it brings the eye in, it's a little darkened on the sides. You can do it naturally. Sometimes, like Lucia, in your garden, for example, if you go out to shoot some flowers in very early morning light, sometimes where it's either sidelit or backlit, it'll automatically vignette for you. You'll see the dark around that flower with the flower lit up. Am I describing this the way you would consider it?
A shadow around.
Yeah, a shadow around the edge of it. And I like that effect to bring out things like portraits or flowers, things like that that I want to have in focus, or the focus of the photograph. My own training, being that I am an amateur, a novice, I've taken some wonderful classes from Kathy Eister and Michael Schweitzer, who teach at the Rocky Mountain School of Photography, but I will tell you what, Dickinson Lifelong Learning Center, they have the most fabulous classes. They teach there. So they teach both places. You can take courses at either place from them. Very helpful as far as the technical aspects. And the difference I see with this type of art form, it is so technical. It is, well, every art form is, but this is so technical as far as the computer aspect of it and as far as getting to know your camera. Very technical. Also, Scott Rouse teaches Lightroom, if you're interested in Lightroom at all. And that's a very technical program as well, and I have barely scratched the surface with that program. My philosophy, so we'll get into viewpoint, and then you guys share yours since you all do this too. I look for objects and landscapes while out and about, but I really try to capture the moments and light as much as what I get is serendipity or luck. Example, this here. I was actually just looking for light on a very cold, gray, dark day, was taking a walk along the Clark Fork River, was looking at this rock, these rocks in the water, there was the bird. All right, so that was serendipity. I wasn't looking for the bird. You'll see another shot I'll tell you about in a minute too with a bird similarly. I was looking for something else and there was the bird. So when you're out, those moments start to present themselves. There's a certain meditation to it. There they are. Let me think what else here. Like painting, I look for patterns, lines, shapes, color, and especially light. I like to try different perspectives before setting up my shots or my tripod. At first I was hand-holding everything, and of course I wasn't getting really good results. And what I'm seeing now as I'm doing more is the tripod is my best friend. I do a lot better. So I scout it out first, and I'm patient, and then I set up my tripod. I love something called a gorilla pod, if you guys aren't familiar with it. Do you know what those are? Yeah, because you can even drape them on your arm or, you know, wherever you are if you're out hiking or something like that and don't want to lug equipment. I really like that a lot. Okay, so let's talk a little about, what I'll do is I'll go through what I'm looking at while I'm taking the photo, and then we'll go through the photos. And you can probably see what I'm doing in terms of what I'm looking at. First thing is what feelings, thoughts, memory, or desire should the photo convey? Secondly, how does the framing affect the photo? Should the objective be isolation of something or inclusive of several elements in a scene? So this is isolation. I was isolating these flowers, whereas here was inclusive. I wanted that landscape. I wanted the water. I wanted the bird. What type of balance should be used in the composition? The dynamic rule of thirds or a spiral to guide the eye in. So this would be more of the thirds as far as layers. This is more central. It's a little bit of that spiral, but it's a little more central. Do the lines guide the eye or balance the composition? Does the choice of the optics work for what I want to achieve? For example, in close-ups, zooms, or wide angle. So this was done with macro. This was done with a zoom. Okay? Both in a way are close-ups, but in a different way. How does the shutter speed and aperture affect the aesthetics? Slow exposure, etc. for bokeh. This is a very, very slow exposure here. It was done very dark January night, and I artificially lit it with a candle. Okay. Are there repetitive elements for rhythm in the composition? We'll see one upstairs where I did that on purpose. Okay. What color or tonal contrasts are important? Would black and white be better to convey the message of the photo? I don't have any black and whites in this, but an example I'll give you is I traveled to Sealy Lake High School to work. And one day I was coming back in winter, and I stopped at 9 Mile Prairie, if you know where that is, on the Blackfoot. And I was going to take the photo because I really liked the winter light. It was blues, it was reds, and for the dogwood, etc. I ended up doing it in black and white. And the reason was the contrast was so dramatic. I'd just come to the show here, the Ansel Adams, and it was an Ansel Adams photo just because of the way the light hit that water, the light hit the rocks. It was more dramatic and more meaningful in the black and white. So it's just an aesthetic choice, I think. How does the light work to direct or contribute to the photo? Does the light add mood? If it is mood or atmosphere I'm photographing, the temperature of the light is especially important to me. And I think about this in how I work with my kids. Okay, so this was purposeful, 2 different kinds of lighting. To me, this is cool and calming. Sometimes I do this with kids, darker, calmer, settle them down. So the effect to me that I was looking for was more of the calm. That bird, calm. Whereas it was a freezing cold January night, and I wanted to do this photo. I wanted warmth. I wanted it to say, wake up, rev up, have energy. So there's a very warm light. So there's the difference. If we go outside this time of year, you have more of that warm light. Okay, of course it's summer, it's late spring, summer, whereas in the winter you have that cooler light. So you're going to see in all my photos, these are mainly cool because most of them were taken in winter. Does anyone have any questions about these or any comments or thoughts about your work and how you...
You're more inspired then by other photographers or by artists with paint and medium like that?
I would say both equally. Actually, this show has inspired me on both ends very much. More towards the painting again, and the direction I'm going now is combining them. So I just did a portrait that is combined photography and pastel. So.
Well, you can see it in both these, like you said, the texture and the grain on the bottom, the Ansel Adams type.
Yeah.
Or the
that show deeply, did it inspire you?
Yeah,
Oh my word, it just blew me away. It came back 5 times because, yeah.
There's a lot to see.
There was so much to see, absolutely. The time I do use Photoshop some is to layer textures. So sometimes what I do, this is a new thing for me, is I'll go and take a texture, I'll photograph it. So grainy rock or wood or even like wallpaper, something unusual with texture. And then in Photoshop, opaque it and layer it on my photo. I wish I had one to show you. I did an orchid this way. I loved the orchid, but I wanted it to look like a botanical painting. So I took wallpaper that looked like a botanical painting, opaqued that, layered it, and then erased the orchid so it looks like this kind of botanical painting in a garden, So the creative elements are endless too. I always thought that it would be easier than painting. In some ways it's not. I think painting is a challenge for me, but this is too, more the technical piece of it. Yeah. Anyone else have questions or thoughts?
Do your students see your work quite a bit, or do you do photography with your students?
I do some, yes. And actually they love having their picture taken and played with. Or they love doing self-portraits, and to me that's a really good medium for them because they don't understand faces well. They don't read faces well, that population. And you can kind of teach with that. Are you happy? How are you feeling today? Am I feeling happy? I'm feeling good about you. That kind of thing. So they respond to that quite a bit. They love having theirs taken, though, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so these two, again, what I was really looking at is light, and both were snow washed. And knowing photography will see what I've learned now is I underexpose them. They should have had more. So what I really was looking for here were chickadees. There were all these chickadees in trees, and all of a sudden this sweet little nuthatch presented itself, which of course I wanted to photograph, but what I saw when I got through the lens was the spoka. Mm-hmm. So that's really, to me, the crux of what I wanted, was that color, that contrast, that composition, and that light, which sets it as cool and snow. Okay, this was in October. It's at Glen Lake, if you've ever hiked there. And it had snowed that day. So the color and light were very different than what we expected, because down in the valley it was smoky and hot. We get up here and it's kind of a winter scene. But that really, what I was looking for were the lines to guide the eye. So I wanted those trees to kind of settle that foreground in there so you would see that first. And then also the light and the color. Any questions or thoughts on?
I think the red really stands out on the bottom.
Yeah,
So.
it was really it was pretty color, And that was one of the most gorgeous autumns, I think. Did you think so? Last autumn was just spectacular. We had such beautiful, beautiful color. Yeah. So those are those. And also here I would say lines too for the composition lead you to the bird, you know.
I like the positioning of the bird because it's, you know, you usually don't see birds like that.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
usually
Look at
it's,
it horizontal.
you know,
Sure.
standing on a branch or
Sure.
they've got their head up or they're looking around, but to be pointing down, you know, hanging on the side of the bark that way, pointing down, just gives it kind of a weird tension too.
Sure. And you know, and that's another consideration I do a lot, to be honest with you. You probably do with painting. Is it going to be a horizontal or vertical format? And it's a decision you make in terms of what you want the composition to bear. You know, and so certainly that was going to be vertical. Here's a funny story with it. And I can't plug Yellowstone Photo enough. I love them. I mean, I've known them since my daughter was born. I mean, they're this wonderful custom full service photo developing, and you know, they have beautiful papers. I didn't know this. I mean, so if you want to combine photography and painting, say, they actually have watercolor paper. I mean, you could print onto your watercolor paper and combine it if you want to. What they did for me with these, I had them frame them. I was going to do it myself, but I'm not a professional framer. I do it. My backing isn't great. They do beautiful backing. They suggested something called an enhanced matte. So it's not a glossy, it's an enhanced matte that gives it a little more painterly effect. But there are all kinds of choices you can make when you go in there. But yeah, so yeah, the vertical. The funny story I was going to share with regard to where the bird is going is that when I had it framed, it was upside down. And I knew it because those birds never are going upward. They always go upside down. That's how they feed. And the theory behind it is because it takes energy to fly back up.
So they go to the top and work their way down the tree?
They do. Yeah, they work their way down. And when you watch them now, red-breasted nuthatches, white-breasted nuthatches, this is a pygmy nuthatch, you will always see them feeding upside down.
Probably thinks like a bird. We live on the hill, so she cuts the lawn going downhill.
Smart. Gravity. Let gravity work for you. I like that idea. I think it's good. That's a good idea. Absolutely. The other bird that is little like this, called the brown creeper, goes upward. That's the other thing about photography. What it has done for me is it makes me a very keen observer. I mean, you get out there, you start, almost obsessively, I'll have to say that you see stuff all the time, and you see it in a different way, and you start to see behavior. Example is right now, if you go along that Clark Brook River, the bugs are out, right? Cedar waxwings galore, calliope hummingbirds galore, western tanagers galore. So if you want to go take birds, I mean, just stay in one spot, watch where the bugs are, there they are, there are the birds. So the other day we were out there getting cedar waxwings like crazy, shooting them for about half an hour, you know.
So were you always interested in birds, or did your photography draw more interest into like Audubon, you know, just your knowledge of birds and the names of the different birds, like, or has it just paralleled, the two interests have kind of come together, photography and bird watching?
That's a good question. I'd say I was always a bird watcher, and I love wildflowers. Like, you know, right now, you know, it's a big thing. But this is honing it. You know, it's like now I'm becoming aware of what is that. And one story is last Christmas break, we were down in the Tucson area, and we were hiking in Madera Canyon and seeing all these birds. We had no clue what these birds were, not at all, and they were gorgeous. And we got some really nice photos of them. And then we ran into it, serendipitously, it was the Audubon bird count. And these guys on the bird count, that's an obsessive breed, those people, you know, and they started looking at our photographs and naming them, and they could count them for their bird count. That was really cool, because they hadn't seen them. There was like a green-tailed towhee, you know, and oh, we didn't see that, we can put that on our count. Likewise, they educated us and told us where to go. Like, they knew, you know, the habitats of where, you know, we could go see things. So yeah, it does feed each other. I mean, all of it does. I mean, just as if, you know, I was thinking last summer I took more kids, and it made me really start to observe faces, you know. So I think all of it ties together in terms of how you observe things. Don't you think? I mean, painting too, you know, painting is the same.
Become more interested and more knowledgeable about your subject matter.
Yeah, I think so.
So if this was your first show that you're in,
Yes.
What was the catalyst of doing that?
My brother. I had been to shows here a lot, and he was in town one time and came with me, and he saw a posting about it. He said, Cindy, you should do it. He's been urging me, do something. I shouldn't say this on film, but I'm not real confident with it, I don't trust that it's good enough, okay? Same with painting. I know when we took, was it Bob Finney's class? I never felt, he would see, I never felt it was okay, you know what I mean? So it was a leap of faith. Do it. And it's like, okay, might as well, I'll just do it. And I honestly expected an email to say no. And, it wouldn't have bothered me, seriously. And then I got the email and I flipped out. I mean, really, it's like, oh my God. And this is cool, but it's scary and some, you know what I mean? So it's a leap of faith. It's a start of a start. It's a process thing. I was talking to Lucia yesterday at lunch, is that, I always loved doing art. And obviously Louise, last week we were talking about this. Always loved doing it. Louise always loved doing it. You've always loved doing it. Louise was urged to go to be a dental hygienist. I thought to myself, I should go and find something in the healthcare field that will get me a job as fast as possible, and that if it's in your heart and soul to be creative or to do art, you come back to it, or you find a way to do it. You do it in your work, you do it for fun, you do it because it's a passion, you do it to share, you do it to teach, whatever it is. So it's kind of a full circle thing. I've come back, as a kid I did a lot of art and started out in art education. Did start out in that. And then have come back full bore, like, this part of my life it's become vital again, So it was a leap of faith, and my brother pushed me.
We're good.
Yeah. Now we'll see what happens, it's kind of like, now what? What do you do? But, just keep getting it out there.
What is your next step?
I don't know. I heard Keith Wells loud and clear, and that is that it's always letting go and leap of faith, and that you be perseverant, so whether it is to, start a little website. Other photographers do very much influence me. Like, I have a friend who's in Stockholm, Sweden, who writes poetry and publishes her photos, and she urges, start a website. Even if you don't necessarily sell it, you show it. I do a lot on that Flickr and 500 photos. I do post a lot, and what I love about it is, even though it's kind of a virtual, I know a lot of the people too. A lot of them are local, but the other part of it is you share a lot, and you start to find you have this common interest. Extreme common interest, and you start learning at the technical aspects, like how did you do that, or they ask you how did you do it, and you learn from it. I didn't know how to do bokeh before Flickr. There was a whole little discussion on it. It's like, okay, let's try it.
I don't even know how to say that.
Bokeh?
B-E-H.
It's B-O-K-E-H,
Okay.
and it means blurry background.
Sure.
Or sometimes, I've done photos now, since this, where that's all I'm photographing, and you get these beautiful, if you go on the Flickr site, you'll see it. The Mother's Day photo, if you go on there, is bokeh. And it looks like I was going to photograph a branch of flowers, but what I saw and did was the bokeh, which is these brilliant bursts of light, all blurry, in the same colors as the flowers. Okay, so that's an effect, but it's kind of a fun effect. These, when we were talking about pattern, this is what I saw were the pattern of those leaves. This actually was not, all of these were taken in Montana, except for this one, and this one was taken in Boston. And it was a fall day, and what I just loved was we were walking around the neighborhood, and all of a sudden, look at this concrete, the color of it, and these leaves. Whoa, just kind of blew my mind that way. So the pattern and the line and the color there. This one was a serendipity, okay? And when talking about, do I want it to be inclusive or not, this one, I just wanted that tree to show. And this is rime frost. So it had been a really, really foggy day. And coming home, this was in Playfair Park by Sentinel High School. Oddly enough, the fog lifted, like within 5 minutes, and for about a 15-minute period, there was light. That was it. And there you have it. Now this, I think, is a little bit example of a bokeh. It's not with the bright colors and everything, or lights and all that, but it's blurry. There are all kinds of houses and things behind here. Here's the roof line. But I blurred it on purpose to have that show. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's where always the decision is made. I mean, you really do have to make a decision of what is my shutter speed going to be? What is my aperture going to be? What is my ISO going to be in order to get the effect that I want? So this, in fact, was with a very wide shutter, okay, to let in as much light, but it doesn't give you as much depth of field, okay? Whereas this one was with a much tighter shutter because I wanted the depth of field. I wanted to show all of it, okay? That's all the photos. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Or
Very impressive. But when you go out to do this Ryan Frost one, do you
Yeah.
try it with different ways of doing? I mean, you ended up with this blur composition, but did you go and you maybe take how many pictures and experiment with different?
Oh, absolutely. I get teased a lot from Barry, my husband, that I take 5 times as many photos as he does. In all seriousness, to get one good photo for me, and I think it's because I'm novice too, I probably take 65 to get one good one, which is the beauty of digital, Some of them I'll save, like I rank them. So that Lightroom is what I was going to say about that tool is that it has a nice organizational feature where you can flag them and rank them in a way. So the other day, example, I was taking irises in my backyard, and I tried different backgrounds. I had one that I loved. The rest, I kind of liked, and I didn't get rid of them because down the road I may want to do something with them. Okay, does that answer your
Yes, it
question?
does.
Yeah, I take a boatload. The cedar waxwings the other day, I ended up with 145 cedar waxwing shots. 2 I like. Part of it's focus. It's even with a tripod. Oh, I was going to use it. I use a cable release a lot. So I'll set it up. I'll focus. I'll cable release it. I do a lot of lunar moon shots, and of late I've been doing collages with those. And you have to use a cable release. You just have to. So you set it up, focus, cable release. If you're going to take another one, you refocus, and so forth. So yeah, even with that, I don't always have really clear focus, especially birds because they're moving all the time, And fast-moving birds in particular, like the little calliope hummingbirds that are down at the river, they're really going. And so I have one that I love, but it's not totally focused out of 165. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to take 165 photos?
I probably sat there about, I'd say an hour. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I have it set up, and it focus, take, and sometimes it's in rapid succession, Do any of you know Eugene Beckus? He's a professional bird photographer up in St. Ignatius, and when you go out with him, he's he rapid fire shots, like that with his birds.
Did you do anything with the snowy owls?
Yeah, I have
Yes. Since I went up and saw those, I'm just curious what kind of approaches you used with.
Well, very similar, but they were pretty still. I mean, that was interesting. If any of you are on Facebook, I have them posted or on the Flickr. They're on the Flickr. They are, and you're going to see different effects. My favorite, which isn't necessarily the best photo, is they're 2 juveniles together, and they look like they're snuggling. I mean, they are so darn cute. The other one I really like is not in focus, but you see the wing beats. So you have these lines where it was flying, and so you barely see the face in focus, but the wings are really going like crazy. So yeah, on the Flickr site I have those, or I can just show you them too,
No.
for that matter. Yeah, I got a boatload of
I
them.
would see it as a layperson, just, oh, there's the owl sitting on roof, but how you might have seen it differently or played with it after you've taken it.
Well, the juveniles that were so cute, do you remember, I don't know, when you were up there, the water tower that they were on? It looks like the Guggenheim. No, it does. So that's how I framed it. It's like these two little juveniles are at the Guggenheim or in a playpen. Because, I mean, it's not you know, you wanted it to be natural, right? You want to get them in a tree or whatever. But the fact is, mostly they were on rooftops. They were hanging. Did you see them? Go see them? Oh, it was a residential neighborhood. And there were 17 the day we were there. They're hanging out on the house rooftops or on the water tower. So you have to be really patient. If you really want to get them on the ground or in the tree, you have to stay there a good long time in 10-degree weather and, you know, wait for them to fly to the top of a tree. But it's, even when they're in the tree, you know, while it looks natural, I know that it's in somebody's yard. It's in somebody's yard. Yeah, yeah. So that was a serendipity too. I mean, that was an opportunistic shoot because we knew they were there.
Yeah.
You know, there was no doubt you were going to get a photo. Do you have favorite places to photograph? Do you have
Our
favorites?
garage, I shoot a lot of our
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A ton.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say, you know, there's so many places around, you know, all of the rivers, of course, and then the refuges. So Lee Metcalf, we've gone up of recent times up to Ovando area, Browns Lake. You know, it's amazing. And again, if you like birds, you start seeing stuff you don't know what it is, and you find out what it is. 9 Pipes in the Mission Lake. Where else? Glacier National Park, of course. Some up in the Bitterroots, especially for wildflowers. Hiking, you know, anywhere on Jumbo or up on Mount Sentinel. The flowers are stellar right now, and there are lady slipper orchids out now. But yeah, those would be some really good places just around. And then Missoula, of course, you know, the river and such. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you could come. Yeah.